Good morning, everybody. I'm Melissa Nielsen with Waldorf Essentials, and today we're going to talk about like how long your school day should be. And it's such an individual thing. It's sometimes a very it varies so much, and people get really hung up on it. And so I thought I would just talk this morning about like what do we consider part of our school day? What do we consider school days? And then also just sort of getting you into a mindset of thinking more like a homeschooler and not like being a school, a building schooler. So in a school building, in a regular general classroom, you've got recess twice generally, a 30-minute to 45-minute lunch. You've got a classroom situation where there's, usually 20 to 30 children. So there's a lot of time taken up with management with regards to managing children. There's a lot of time taken up with regards to, school lunch and recess and all of those things. So we want to make sure that when you're sort of thinking about your school day at home, that you're remembering that even though they are in school from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. generally, that there's not school going on the entire time. So when we sort of step back and consider what should be considered school at home, then our spectrum gets really broad. It gets nice and broad. So good morning to everybody who's joining us. There's lots of people joining us over here. I don't know how many people are joining us on YouTube, but good morning on both ends. So again, so we have sort of this model of how long it would take in a typical brick and mortar school. And then at home, we have a lot of different variables. So we've got, we like to get up and go for a walk. And that gets our bodies moving. Also would very much count as sort of a PE kind of situation, although would not be the only thing that we count. Our kids also do karate. They're getting a lot of physical movement outside of our family activity on a almost daily basis. So think about that. Also think about what other things you have going on. So in our school rhythm, we're generally done by 2, and that's been because we've had a high schooler. When we're just working with Sam and Soraya, we will definitely be done by noon. And so if you've got a child that's middle school or under, then you probably, if you are stacked really well and you are using some of the methods that we talk about to teach several children, you should absolutely be done with some afternoon to spare. And that's really just due to being able to rotate well and having a really good plan. But definitely you're not looking at a school day until 3. Your main lesson portion by itself, I don't consider that your whole school day. That's just your main lesson portion. So that's one element of your school day. Handwork would be another element. Music would be another element. Definitely, like I said, going on morning walk is another element. You have all of these other pieces that sort of come together to make up your school day. And so individually, we can look at each one of those individually, but we definitely want to look at, how that makes up your school day in general and how that all comes together. And so like I said, here we get up and we start for a walk. We like to be out the door for the walk by about 9. And that means we've already had breakfast. We've already had our morning devotional stuff as well. And so and morning chores are already done. When we are out the door for a walk, all of those things are done. There's even dishes in the dishwasher at that point. We are on the way out the door. And that takes us probably, I like everybody to be up about 7:30 to get up and get all their snuggles done and then be able to get going on their chores so that we are ready to sit down. We do our morning devotional and our breakfast at the same time. And I'd like to be ready to sit down by 8:15, 8:20. And that way it gives us plenty of time for our morning discussion and plenty of time to eat, even for the slower ones, and then plenty of time to sort of clean up the table. Because when we come back from that walk, we're starting with school. Like right away. And so I don't like to come back to a mess in the kitchen and a mess at the table. So we really try to stack that well with our morning rhythm. And then, like I said, we're out the door at 9. Our walk, generally, we walk about a mile. And I say walk. It's not a bike ride. It's not a scooter ride. It's a walk. And there's purpose to that. We're trying to really get their bodies flowing. We do a lot of talking on our walk. We might do some tongue twisters on our walk. We might do some word games on our walk. You know, that walk is it's communal, but it's also, so it serves a little bit of a circle time purpose for us, but it's also it's not a slow walk. It's not a nature walk. It's not a, kind of ambling walk. It is a purposeful walk. So we are there and back in 30 minutes. And when we come back, everybody uses the potty and we get going on school like right away. I find that if you let there be a gap between the walk and getting started, you're never going to get started, or you're going to lose children. So it becomes it becomes necessary for you to sort of keep that river flowing of, it's this breathing in and breathing out, but it's also this very much so a flowing river, and we don't want to dam it up. We want to make sure it keeps going. So after that morning walk, and I would say, people will say to me, do you take a morning walk even when you're in cold weather? Absolutely. We used to live in Idaho, and it was dang cold. Like the entire month of January was generally below zero. And so we had to do some different things when it was super cold, but we generally walk every day. And of course, here in San Diego, it's not a big deal. But even when we lived in cold weather, we tried to walk every day. When we lived in Utah, we had some days that were like red days, so they didn't, because the pollution was so bad, so they didn't want us out on those days. That was one of the reasons we left there. But so when you have those sorts of restrictions, we do things inside, like play yoga garden for 30 minutes to get everybody's body moving, do jumping jacks, do other things to get people moving. And then, of course, we would have a bigger circle at that point because we were inside. So, but anyway, we do this walk pretty religiously, and we're moving on. Did you have a question over there, mister?
Yes, Lapika Peterson asks, what do you recommend for a morning walk if you live somewhere that is not family walk friendly?
Oh, we lived there. Did you live by me? No, I'm just kidding. We used to live mid-city San Diego, and it was definitely not always the safest place to take a morning walk. And so we had to get really good. We walked cemeteries a lot. We would just get in the car sometimes and drive to a cemetery. We were lucky enough to, our home was, it was a few blocks from a cemetery, but we were able to get to the cemetery and walk there. But there were also many times that we just got in the car. We got in the car. I remember getting in the car and going, very often we would go to a place that had, like here, we would go to the waterfront and walk the waterfront. But find a route. I like I said, a mile. Soraya's been walking a mile. She's 7, but she's been walking a mile since she's probably 3 or 4. Because she needed it. She's got some sensory stuff going on that makes her incredibly bouncy in the morning. And so, lots of times of the day, not just in the morning. But we definitely, we started that 1 mile walk, and she takes a 1 mile walk probably 3 times a day, and sometimes more. But that's her general 3 times a day, 1 mile walk. And it really is incredibly helpful. Where we live now, we live in a condo. We don't have a backyard, but our backyard is the ocean. So we're 3 blocks from the beach, and we walk. So we have a nice walk every day. But when we didn't, we would drive to find a place. So Lapika, my suggestion to you and anybody else that's in that spot is, when you're out driving today, look for a place. Look for a, when we lived in Idaho, there were some great parks that just had long walking tracks. Now, granted, there was a playground too, so we would have to park at the other end of the park. So the playground was not so much of a distraction. But when you're driving around today, my suggestion is to look for some places that would be conducive to a walk. Okay, so questions over here. This is my first year homeschooling, having 4 children at once. I'll have kindy, first grade, fourth, and fifth. I plan to start with the youngest first. Good job. That's always the best thing to do. And having older kids help while I do first grade. Let's see. While I do first grade work, how do I balance school time with fun time with so many kids? I worry they're going to be doing school all day. So they're definitely, as you get started, it might feel a little wonky at first, but once you get going, I do this rotation thing. And if you're a Thinking, Feeling, Willing member, you can see I have a whole mom lesson on teaching many children. If you're not, then there is also a free file under the resources section at waldorfessentials.com. So you can look there on teaching several children. And we also have some stuff in podcasts on teaching several children. So this information, is out there for everybody. I rotate well, but what I mean by that is when there are other children that are not doing their lessons, does not mean they're off playing. So because we do school-centered reading for it's generally about an hour a day. So what I do is I take the child's age and multiply it by 5, but then I put a cap on it at an hour, because otherwise I have children that would read, but mom, I should read for an hour and 45 minutes. So I don't allow that. So we cap it at an hour. But so you could have one child helping with the kindergartner for sure. You could have one child doing their school reading. And then when that child is done with their school readings, that buys you an hour right there. And so you're keeping the youngest one busy, but I also wouldn't keep them busy with a lot of toys. I would keep them busy with, hey, let's play Play-Doh, or hey, let me read you a book, or hey, let's draw together, or hey, I would limit what it is that they're doing during that school time so that they aren't off playing. I would absolutely allow, like we used to do, especially when they're kindergartners, board games a lot. I think that my older kids played Candyland a lot, not just when it was their turn. They played Candyland, and then I can remember when they were like, hey, I think we should teach you how to play Monopoly. and it said no parent ever, but it's definitely a fun one for kids. And so we kept games like that that were part of sort of the school days, so that they could help. They had something to do with the younger child. So that's hopefully that's some good ideas for you. Natisha says, how do you handle the transition after the walk with an infant? Trying to picture it. So with an infant, so when we walk in the door, because I did this, I had 5 children, so I had lots of times I had infants. We would walk in the door, and I would say, everybody go potty, and then I would assign a child. Harry, you get the snack tray out, because we've already got the snack tray prepped. And if for some reason the snack tray wasn't prepped, I would send an older child to prep the snack tray. The younger children were to go to the bathroom and to get a drink of water while I'm changing a diaper, while I'm getting the baby adjusted in the sling so that I can nurse, that kind of thing. I used the sling for nursing so much, because then I could nurse and still do the other things I needed to do. Now, when we did when we took a break, then I would absolutely do the regular mom feed, resting and sitting with the baby. And but generally after the walk, the baby is generally ready to go down for a nap too. And so I often did that. Now, if you have a situation where you can't nurse in the sling, or you definitely need to sit in the chair and calm a baby down, what I would do is I would use that as read aloud time. I would, pick a read aloud, and you nurse while you're either reading, or you nurse while everybody takes turns reading. And then when the baby's asleep, then you can get going on your next, the next transition as far as like getting into school. So hopefully that helps. But those are tricks that really worked for us. Let's see, we have another one. What did you do when she was younger, in and out of a stroller? I have a 2-year-old that likes to run. Oh, yes. So I would do the stroller if you need to. I also did the backpack a lot. I also made sure that I went to places that 2-year-olds could just run. So we were at parks a lot. And generally what I find is if you are at a place that's relatively safe and you have a child that's pokey, it's okay for you to walk ahead. You're not leaving them behind, but they'll follow you. Generally, they'll follow you. I haven't had, like I said, I have 5 children, and definitely out of the 5, my middle son was definitely one that would be like, he'd bolt, he'd like be gone. But even with that, we were able to do our morning walks with no problem. And so I would just was super aware of where they were all the time. So you could do the stroller if that's what you need to. But like I said, I think there are it becomes a good time for everybody to get some good exercise in, because there's like this static electricity that builds up over the night. And so in the morning, they need to wear it off. So, any other questions about the walk on your end? Okay, so we've got this morning walk in. We come home. We've transitioned into, and I talked about the snack tray. Talk about the snack tray in some other podcasts, and I've talked about it before. I like to have the snack tray out because then I'm not cutting 10 different apples. I cut a bunch of them at once. There's usually, some fruit and maybe some cheese and maybe some crackers, or often it might be leftover pancakes from breakfast or whatever that's on the snack tray. So if somebody says I'm hungry and wants to use that as an excuse to not want to do schoolwork, I could go, here you go. And it's out all the time. And it's accessible to everybody. And then often what I used to try to do is if there's things left over on the snack tray, from the snack between breakfast and lunch, I try to roll those things into lunch if at all possible, and make them part of that. If there's leftover cheese, pop it on sandwiches, that kind of thing. So that's sort of how we handle the snack tray. Then we're not, especially when you have several children, it's not such a big deal with Sam and Soraya. In fact, I haven't used the snack tray in a while because they're snackers, but it's not in the same way as when I had a whole house full of children. And so the snack tray it's an incredibly easy way to be able to take care of everybody. So we might transition then into having a short prayer or verse right before we start our school day, and then we disperse. So in the way we have things set up now, where I've only got 2 main lessons that I'm working on, we've got something different that my high schooler is doing, but what we've got now with just 2 main lessons that we're working on, Sam would be off doing his reading while I'm working with Soraya. Excuse me. So that's how we're working the 2 of them. And then by the time he's done with his reading, then we're done. I'm done with Soraya and we're moving on. But we also, before that, I should say, I like to do handwork before main lesson because that ensures that it gets done. So we've had this like prayer time after our walk, and before everybody disperses, we're going to do handwork first for about 20 minutes. And I use Sparkle Stories for that. We use 1 Sparkle Story as the length of time that handwork usually is. So we'll just listen to a story while we're doing handwork. And so we'll do handwork, and then we'll do music as well. And so do a music lesson. And they're kind of in different places now. So this year I will probably split and do music lesson during their time with me. So we might do some songs together that are communal songs that maybe they're both working on, where especially with Music Unfolds, where one child might just be working on singing the songs and the other child's working on playing the songs. We might do that together so that we're all learning the songs together. But then we split. When it's time for main lesson with my first grader, Sam will be doing his reading. Sam will be in 6th grade this year. So then when he's done with his reading, after that hour, she'll be done with her main lesson, and then she's free to go. She's free to go and go play, and it'll be time for his lesson. So as you rotate them through, then you let them go and play. And the caveat to that is you can't be crazy. If you are crazy, you're going to have to come sit next to me. And with that, I just mean like no disruptions, no intentional fighting, no, the mom stuff, like the no list. And so I try to not, I hate the no list. So I try to not utilize it on a regular basis. But then we're pretty much working through main lesson, and I guess then the golden question is, how long do main lessons last? And it really depends on the age of your child. So main lesson would be made up of a generally either an art and story piece or a recall and writing piece. And this is just generally, especially for the lower grades. So that takes about an hour. It takes about an hour for that piece, sometimes longer. If you're painting, it might take a little bit longer. But generally not. So I already have, if it's a painting day, my painting is already, my paint is already set up. All of the things, I have everything ready. probably also because I probably have been painting that morning before they got up, and sort of doing some work to refresh my memory if I haven't already done that painting several times. So I've got all of those things on hand. So it should not take more than an hour to do that main lesson portion. And I would say that's about par for at least first and second grade. Third grade, maybe a little bit longer, maybe an hour, 10 minutes, and maybe an hour 20. By fourth to sixth, you're looking at, or fourth and fifth, you're looking at maybe an hour and a half. Now, sixth grade comes and they're doing, in our house, we do an hour of math a day. So in sixth grade on up, you're looking at math is no longer a block, it's a track. So it follows along, tracks you as you go through the whole school year. So you're not taking that break from mathematics that you do while it's sleeping when they're younger. So at this point, they have all those basics and now they're building. Now that doesn't mean they're getting something brand new every day, but it does mean that they're practicing every day. So sixth grade, there's a lot of business math involved and you're doing a lot of recapping things that they did when they were younger so that you are ready for the things that come. So one of the things that's lovely about the Waldorf way to do math is that, and I really like Jamie York's Making Math Meaningful. That's what we've used for years and we will continue to use through high school. But what I really like is that the things that they learn with business math in sixth grade, they learn how to do things the long way. And so they don't get the formulas for them until about seventh or eighth grade. So it really helps you to see the whole process. And so we'll be doing that. So Sam's school day will probably end by about 1. So he'll have an hour of reading in there and then a main lesson and then math. So that's almost a three hours there by itself. And so, and you may need to break that up. You may need to break up that hour of math, or you might find that you can't do an hour, that you have to break it down to 30 minutes. And we've definitely had that issue too. And breaking it up some more during the week. And with that, if that's the case, what I would do is I would work on a goal for the week. And that way, if you can, and not necessarily a timed goal, but okay, well, we're starting here this week. We want to be here by the end of the week. So, hey, if we get it all done on Monday, great. If we don't, then we're partying it out all week long. So that was super helpful when we started to implement that. So that's really it. As the school day ends, we usually light a candle before school starts. We don't do a closing verse as much as we used to. We come together for lunch and we'll, have a family prayer again at lunchtime. And that kind of generally closes us up. I like to have enough snacking going on, and not snacking in an unhealthy way, but I like that there is enough going on that we don't have to break, do lunch, and then come back to do school. So I really like it when we can do lunch as soon as we're done with school. So we try to sort of stretch that out a little bit, since school is generally 1 or 2, depending on, the lesson. So we try to eat a good substantial snack in there so that people can stretch for that. Because then I like to let them go. And then everybody has that afternoon to themselves. So do we have any other questions or comments over there? Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? I feel like that's really the long and short of it. And, moms really stress a lot about whether or not they're measuring up to what's going on at the school. And I wouldn't stress about it. I will say, too, on other days, because I definitely count our co-op days as school. We're gone to go to co-op. We leave at about 9, and we don't get home often until 2 or 2:30. Absolutely a full school day. I am so worn out when we get home. I'm usually laying down and kids are off, just like, also having their quiet time. What's funny, when you teach kids how to do this breathing in and breathing out thing, how they seek their own quiet time after they've been in that out breath, they'll seek their quiet in breath on their own. So Jen over here asks, is it better to do handwork before main lesson or after? I do it before. And I have a testimony of doing it before. I didn't used to do it before. I used to do it with my bigger kids. We did it after. And we, I'm pretty proficient at handwork, so I'm always sort of doing something. So I didn't have a problem necessarily keeping them engaged. But what I found was with Super Sam, when he was in first grade, we were doing handwork before. And the days that we did handwork before, his reading comprehension, his ability to read was better than it was on the days that we did handwork after. So we started doing handwork before. And I found that it not only does it help anchor the school day, it makes sure that you get it done and out of the way, because that's one that people will often just decide to forget, especially if mom's not like if mom's not one that's working on projects like that on a regular basis, then it's easy to go, oh, I do not want to sit with this child while they knit for 20 minutes. It's totally easy to do that. So if you get it done before your main lesson, then it's done, and it's sort of out of the way. So hopefully that helps. Okay, another question over here. When you had an infant, did your days go longer? I'm wondering if I need to work a different nap schedule to make my day flow smooth. Maybe starting a walk now will help when we start our regular, thank you, Facebook, lessons. I think that it would be a good idea to try to start into your rhythm now. I think the most important thing to remember about having a baby is that it changes. It changes often, changes frequently, and it changes quickly. So what you set up in September or now is not going to be the same thing that's happening at Christmas time. And it's not going to be the same thing that's happening in the spring, because they change so quickly. They go through different times of needing a nap. Generally, what I have always done is just try to integrate my children into everything that I was doing. So if it was time to take a nap, then it was time to take a nap. But I stopped and I made sure I got them down for a nap. I don't let them run off to play. Do not let the bigger kids run off to play. If I have to stop and change diapers or put a child down for a nap, just because it's too hard to get them back. So if I have to step away, I try to keep them, completely engaged in something when possible. I also always try to keep it quiet enough that I could, for the most part, put an infant down for a nap in the rocking chair with everybody in the room. As long as people aren't talking to me every 3 seconds, then it's generally we can get a baby down. I had to go and lay down in the bedroom, like as they get older, because from about 9 months to about 14 months, they're like, I'm not having it. You're not going to rock me to sleep in this rocking chair. And so I would have to go and lay down with the baby. But in general, I would work around those things as much as possible. And so where you're saying that your nap, Natasha, her nap is not until about 12, I think you can get a ton of school done before that, a ton. And, if you have to stop and do a little bit of nursing to sort of get her through to the end, till nap time, then what I would do is, get her down for a nap, eat your lunch in peace and quiet. Well, relative peace and quiet, because you have your other children. She also says, it does change. That makes me nervous. And she is my heart baby that wants to be close at all times and involved. There were children that I wore like in a sling the entire school year. I was trying to think. Definitely Soraya. Definitely. It seems like I either had her on my person in a sling, or daddy was holding her. She needed to be held like all the time. She was a preemie and she had some things going on even then. But and I was thinking about my bigger kids. Ellie was kind of a clingy baby for a while, and so she was in the sling, and so was Samuel. And so I had either the sling or the backpack on constantly for school. And they were close, and often they would go, especially on the backpack, they would go to sleep. So, keep that in mind. Play around with things. Do some experimenting now where you've got some time. Give yourself a break. Realize they're only going to be small for a time. So this school year might be a little bit wonky, but next year you won't have the same issues. Next year you'll have a toddler that you're trying to wrangle. And so enjoy this while you can. I love to enjoy the time before they're mobile, because it really, it's really more handy than you know. Once they get mobile, then you're like, wait a minute, now they're into everything. But again, even when they're a toddler, it's such a short time. And it might just be the like old lady in me saying this, but it's such a short time. Please enjoy it. They grow so fast. They grow from being 7 to being 21, like in the blink of an eye. Okay, you have a question over there.
Prairie Pioneer Schoolhouse says, I want so desperately to get my kids off of TV during the school year, but it seems like such a helpful tool when I'm trying to do individual lessons with one child. I have 5 kids.
Yeah, so hide the remote, unplug it from the wall, and that makes things a little bit easier because then you don't have it there. Um, I would say do not wait until the school year to try that. I would say start now to have quiet times that do not involve the TV. I would utilize audios instead of TV. I would say, hey, I'm going to put on a story. So we do Sparkle Stories. We also do some Magic Tree House on Audible. I'm so tired of Mary Pope Osborne's voice, and it really has nothing to do with Mary Pope Osborne. It has everything to do with the fact that I listen to her all the time. There's so many options that you can use for audios. So I think that's a great substitute to have the audio going instead. And you can always get audios at the library. I remember Jim Weiss used to be a storyteller that we used to grab audios from at the library. There's so many options for audios. I would do your best to transition now into that so that you have some more peace in your school year when it starts. And I definitely never allow the TV on while I'm doing school. Never is a great way to cut yourself off at the knees. Do not allow the TV on during school. It just, and even if you think it's going to buy you some time, it really doesn't. It really doesn't, not overall. I totally get having 5 kids. I have 5 kids. They're always doing something else. I would lay out their ages, and you've got a couple of kids that can be helping with younger ones. You've got kids that can be doing their school reading. There's really no reason for the TV to be on. I used to have a no TV until 4:00 rule. And now I have there's several days where the TV is like not on at all in my house, and it's super helpful. Behavior changes when the TV is off, and it's a hard transition at first, especially if it's been on for a while. But I tell you, trust me, behavior changes like in such a massive way that you will say, why did I ever turn that idiot box on to begin with? It's just such a massive way that it changes. And I know it's hard. Listen, we're a media family. I mean, Eric has a film degree. We love to go to the movies. We enjoy some TV shows, but and our kids enjoy some TV shows, but it is not the mainstay in any way, shape, or form. It is not on all day long, and I know that that's a change for a lot of people, but it really, really will help you if you just lose the remote at the beginning of the year. Well, the other thing you could do if you don't lose your remote, just take the batteries out. I've done that too. Okay, other questions over here. Casey says, my youngest lived in the sling. He slept in it while I did lessons. Yep, it's the best. Casey and I are about the same age. She knows when they were little. It's so easy. Okay, let's see. Natasha says, it sounds good. You make it sound so smooth. Pray for me. Yes, ma'am, I will. It will be smooth. It will just take you deciding that the little things aren't going to trip you up. And it just takes a different mindset. It takes kids realizing, oh, wait a minute, this isn't going to make her mad, so I should quit doing it. It takes kids realizing that they don't need to have contention with each other. But so much of that helps if you go on that morning walk, because they get a lot of that, especially if I'm pretty sure you have boys. I just remember with my big boys, it was like, holy cow, where's all this coming from? Get out the dang door. Once they were out the door and they were able to do their like crazy outside on the sidewalk, then it didn't seem so bad as when it was in my living room. So it allows them to sort of get all that crazy out. And then they come back. I like the term pliable exhaustion. I may have invented that term, actually. I've been using it for a lot of years. Do you think I invented it, dear? I don't think I've heard it anywhere else. I'm pretty sure I invented it. Pliable exhaustion. You want them to be so exhausted that they can't fight with you or each other, but pliable enough that they still want to do schoolwork, or that they still will do schoolwork. So it's definitely a balance, and you have to play with that balance. But I would run my big boys hard, and we would come to where we would be like a half a block from the house, and I would do things like, all right, I want the two of you to race to the front door, because they were competitive enough that they would run as fast as they could, and then they would get even more exhausted. It was great. It was great. I especially made them do that in the snow. That's great. Becca says, one of the reasons we've taken a break from our local co-op is that it runs through a regular nap time. How do you balance disruption, especially on a weekly basis? What are the kids doing while you are resting after co-op? The kids are also resting because they're also exhausted from co-op. And so they've had this big breath out, and because I have taught them well, they instinctively want some quiet. Usually what happens is that as I'm parking the car, Soraya will say, can I just lay in my bed and listen to some stories? Or can I sit and draw and listen to some stories? My answer is always yes. So, I'll come in the house, everybody will go potty. I'll set her up with the tablet in her room with some stories without playing. She's not playing with the tablet. She's listening to stories on it. She might be drawing or just laying in her bed. Sam might want to read. And so we have relative quiet. When I had big kids, it was still, even with the big kids, everybody wanted to scatter afterwards because they'd been on socially. And so even children that are extremely social need that breath in, and it's our job to sort of teach them that. So, that's definitely, even when we had big kids, that's what we did. We had this sort of quiet space afterwards, and then I will lay down and opt to fall asleep. They'll wake me up when it's time, on the couch or something like that, in this chair often. I might sit down with my handwork, and I'm usually not even a row in. So with regards to how to balance that disruption, I would not forego co-op because of naps. I would not, because your children will adjust. And if you've got, especially if you've got an infant or a toddler, utilize the backpack. I see the moms at our co-op all the time, and they are awesome warriors. I watch them, and I remember when my kids were those ages, and I've got mamas, I'm watching them put the baby on their back and bouncing around until the baby goes to sleep. And so, I know that there are babies at our co-op that are getting their nap time in while they're at co-op, or at least getting down for a nap while they're at co-op. I would not allow one day a week to really stress you out, and I would not go because of that. If it's a co-op that really enriches your children, you should go, because I think that outweighs the need for that nap. The child will adjust. And I know that sounds really counterintuitive, but I promise it'll work. Natisha says, I'm going to try to do things the way I see it working while blocking out the peanut gallery. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Do you have anything else over there? Okay, very good. All right, everybody. I think we're done. If you have any other questions about this topic, just shoot me a note. I just think that school rhythm is important, and it's important for us to sort of not compare ourselves to what's going on in the brick and mortar school, whether it be public or private, and not stressing about that. Even if you are bound by how many instruction hours you need to do versus school days, usually what I say is try to keep a child from learning. It's not possible. So if you've got hours to fill instead, then I would make sure that you are at the library every week, bringing home plenty of books that can fill some of those hours at home. And whether it be books that you're reading or books that they're reading, but there are so many ways to fill those hours, and do not sell yourself short, because there's so much that we're doing. And often homeschool moms are trying to compensate for what they see other people doing. And in that compensation, sometimes it's great, and sometimes you're trying to kill yourself. Don't try to kill yourself. It's not necessary. Your kids are fine. So I think that's all. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. I will see you next week. And I cannot remember what we're talking about, but I know we're talking about something. I'll send you out an email. See y'all later. Bye now.